right, Claudia Poccia, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
So Claudia Poccia, we're friends since we know each other since 2015, right? We met at the Women's Wear Daily
Yes.
event, and I remember when I met you, I went with this headhunter named Annabelle or Isabella, I think Annabelle. She told me this is Claudia Poccia. She was the CEO of Laura Mercier, and there was like a whole crowd around her, and we spoke. And I remember that you told me you're from Cooper City originally. I'm like, I'm from Cooper City. You're like, no way. You went to the FIU. I went to the FIU, and that's how we clicked. So I said, listen, I need some help in the beauty industry. I'm new. I need to get a bunch of big brands in my box. Like, I'll help you out. I got you. And we started working together. She was consulting for me for a couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to
Yeah.
put time on it, but you had to wait after your non-compete was expired, right?
Yes.
And then we started working. So Claudia you're the ideal corporate suit person, successful U.S. corporate America. You've been to L'Oreal, and then you went to Lauder, then you went to Shiseido throughout the years. Throughout those years, you actually were the CEO of Laura Mercier, which is a big makeup brand. You were the president of Avon Beauty Global, that was doing about $1.5 billion a year in March, which was you grew it to 100 million yourself. You were later on the CMO of bareMinerals. You were just a lot of titles, and you're really going. You're the
You're making me
GM.
sound very old.
You're the GM. And well, I'm giving them all the information. You're the GM CEO of Stila after the acquisition to Lauder. So it's like, if anyone needs to know anything about beauty through the corporate world, this is you. You understand. You're the typical suit person that after they acquire you, you show up and say, we're taking over from here. That's pretty much what. Is that a good representation? Wasn't that the way it was after they acquired Stila? You showed up like, welcome to the new show. I'm here running things.
And they said, and who are you exactly? And who invited you? We just wanted the check. We didn't expect
We didn't want
the
anyone
suits.
else.
Yeah.
No, well, first of all, thanks for having me. And yes, I have spent 30 plus years in the industry at big companies like Lauder and Avon and all of those. But the most fun I've had, quite frankly, recently is working with entrepreneurs like yourself. I think you started that, or maybe Janine Lobel on Stila did, but have recently been working with founders and helping them with everything from finding capital for their business to their business plans, to brand proposition, go to market, product development, all of it. And it's been rewarding to take everything you learn, from your experience in these massive global entities, and then to bring it down and just kind of distill, what do you really need, right? What's really going to be valuable to you?
Yeah.
It's like you have so many things, and it's kind of like hard to unpack right away everything you've been through. But we're trying to pick on your your experience and peel the layers.
Sure.
Peel up the layers. Tell us about you getting your job in Estee Lauder, going into that corporate America on the 40th floor or so, 50th floor, overlooking Central Park, getting a job over there, just coming from the FIU, Florida International University. Tell us that story.
Sure. Well, first of all, there's this saying that you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. Mm-hmm. So I sit here a work in progress. So you're going to hear a lot of those today because my path has been a little crazy. And I am an accidental beauty executive. I did not plan to do this. I went to FIU because I thought I was going to be in international business, and then I had to make money. So I started selling cosmetics behind.
Such a pain in the ass, that making money thing, right?
Your parents finally say it's time.
Yeah.
And so, as you and I were talking about, I had to leave school and start working, which takes us back to Estee Lauder.
Did you finish?
Ultimately through executive development, but not through a traditional degree. And I have Estee Lauder Corporation to thank for that. Actually, Leonard Lauder. So yeah, I had to jump off. But back to your story, my path to Lauder actually came through being on an entrepreneurial business called Giorgio Beverly Hills. And at the time, there was a brand called Calvin Klein's Obsession, and we were in a dogfight. I mean, and the woman who was running Calvin Klein left to go to Estee Lauder. And I happened to run into her at Fort Lauderdale Airport.
Oh.
And she just said, "Are you blissfully happy?" And I was like, "I'm happy." I don't know about blissful, but I'm happy. And she said, "Well, I'm going to Estee Lauder," which for me was like a dream come true, because I remember working at that cosmetic counter when the Lauder
What year was it?
When I went
Don't
to
do that.
No. We need to know the chronological.
1912.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
1912, and there was a carriage outside.
No, for real. Wait. I'm trying to give people perspective of timing when it was a private company to a public company now.
Oh yeah, no, that was in the early 90s. Actually.
Early 90s,
Early
okay.
90s for sure. I think it was 92 actually. And so anyway, just in the Fort Lauderdale airport, and I ran into Robin Burns, who had just become the president of Estee Lauder US. And we had this conversation, and she said, "I'm putting together my team. I'd love to have you on my team." And she goes, "I don't know what position. We're making it up as we go right now. Like I'm evaluating what I have. I'm looking to see where my gaps are. And, I would love to have an opportunity for us to chat." So flashback to when I was working behind the counter in the 80s, and the Lauder executives would come in. And I was so blown away by their professionalism, and they had the best space and location and the best marketing plans, and they knew their stuff. And I always thought, wow, one day I would love to work for Estee Lauder. And this little South Florida girl would love to work in those corporate offices. So to have that happen, that conversation happen 10 years later, by chance in an airport, was a mind blower. So I said, yes, I don't care what I do. Just put me in a place, and, I'm just happy to be here. And so that's when it started. And I actually was put in a holding pattern, which was great, because I got to do a lot of things on the marketing side, working with the family. I actually managed one of the team that managed Evelyn Lauder's first photography book tour, which, was my first
Let me just
assignment.
go and break it down for the audience. So Estee Lauder is a family-owned company at first. Now
Yes.
it's a public company.
Yep.
It was Estee Lauder that started. Leonard Lauder, the whole family
How old
worked
is that
in it.
business?
Oh, gosh. We'll have to check my dates on Estee. I mean, I left there.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, let's Google that.
I'm gonna Google it.
Yeah.
Keep going. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. No, actually, very much a family business. It was Estee and Joe that started it. Joe.
Yeah.
And
all those Joes are very smart people.
they
I'm
are.
gonna say
They're
very,
very smart. They're very
Founded
smart.
in 1946.
Yep.
Yeah.
By like an amazing, groundbreaking pioneer, Estee.
Yeah.
And then Leonard joined the business, and Ronald also. And of course, their children are in the business as well, William and Jane and Aaron. But when I was there, it was very much still a privately held company, and probably one of the best entrepreneurial experiences that you could have. So just because they were really in it, I mean, they knew what it was like to bootstrap and how important it was. And so here was this big company on the outside where people like me in Hollywood, Florida, at the local cosmetic counter, were seeing them come in. And it was like, wow, it's Estee Lauder. And then when I actually got there and got behind the velvet curtain, it was a lesson in entrepreneurship. At the best, it was a front row seat to see that those things that you do to get your business up and running, that the ethos and the work ethic and the attention to detail and the no ego, you do what you got to do to get the job done, was very much embedded in that culture at that time.
I find that interesting, just because a company founded in 1946, well, now you're talking like 40 years later, right? Or almost 50 years later. That company would not normally still be entrepreneurial, right? Normally it would have evolved from that, and then you start to have big company problems.
I think it's in today's world, because in today's world, soon enough, private equity is going to come give you a price that you can't say no to. They'll move on. They'll strip it down, make it mergent with with
Yeah.
the next competitor on the industry. And back then, I guess the investment world, everything was different. The perspective of money wasn't the same as it is today. So companies kept on going. That's why today you don't see too many companies run that have a chance to survive 100 years. Back then it was a normal thing. Big companies just stay, they survive.
Yeah. And what did they do that was so entrepreneurial? Like what was that?
I would say, Leonard had this plaque that he gave us all that I still have today, and I keep it on my desk, which basically said, "Think like your customer."
Mhm.
And they did. So they were always students of what was happening, students of consumer behavior, students of what was happening in the economy, students of, just the macro environment, and really trying to keep their experience real. And we always used to joke before any budget meeting, you were always overspent, right? Because you definitely were very conscious of what you invested in and what you expected out of that. And so, there was that mentality of value and creating value. So that's what I mean, where you're really watching every penny. It's this big company.
Customer focus is
Yeah.
still watching every penny.
Yeah.
So you're not ignorant to your customers. Like when you get to a certain size, sometimes you see that with companies for sure.
Yeah.
And then also you don't just spend to spend. You don't just spend to buy business. You spend to be a profitable, good business.
Yeah. But I would say
And
this.
you carry that on.
And that didn't stick around, because if you look today, they paid 1.4 billion for Too Faced, for example, that was doing, I think, 220 million a year at the time of the acquisition, thinking it's going to be a big brand, multi-billion-dollar. It didn't really happen. Then eventually they obviously bought Stila, overpaid. So things changed. What do
Yeah,
you
I
think
think
changed in the industry that
Well,
they
I think
missed the
two
mark?
things. Yeah, I think two things, Joe. First of all, let's start with things change,
Yes.
and the speed to market, and the market dynamics changed. And the one thing that I do credit, the leadership at the time was, we can build it or we can acquire it if we want to be a leader in that space. And at the time that we started doing acquisitions, it was Aveda in the natural space, and it was MAC in the makeup space. And at the time, Lauder had Prescriptives, which they had built.
What does it mean, prescriptive?
Prescriptives was a makeup artistry brand that then went into skincare, but it was all about color theory, color matching, custom color,
Okay.
personalization of your palettes. They were way ahead of the curve. But there was this emerging consumer demand for makeup and makeup artistry. And they knew that it was taking a long time to build it with Prescriptives. And Leonard or Fred Landhammer or Leonard Lauder, one of those guys, I don't know, I wasn't in the room at the time, but there was something fascinating happening with MAC, and they were just tapping into the zeitgeist of the culture at the time. And, and they were just really creating this cult phenomenon in makeup. And that was really a major acquisition, because Leonard wanted to make sure that they were leaders. They were already leaders in skincare with Estee Lauder and Clinique, and with the Aveda acquisition moving into the natural space. But in makeup, MAC was winning and winning big, and Leonard understood market segmentation. There was a consumer for that. And then came Bobbi Brown, which, if you think about it, you had MAC at this end of the spectrum, right? All races,
Bobbi
all
Brown
colors,
is all the other side.
and Bobbi at the other. So you were really capturing both ends of a
Let me
growing
just
market.
explain the male consumer how it looks. One is very colorful, which is MAC, and all the cool chic girls want to wear. And then the other one is everyday look. I would
Natural.
say
Natural look.
completely different kind of like mindset for someone that doesn't want to go and pop their look with artistry. They just want to do something very no makeup type.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so again, it goes back to understanding the market, understanding that the makeup market is growing, and within that there's market segmentation.
Mhm.
And one brand doesn't do it all, because who wants to wear their mother's makeup?
Mhm.
Estee, right? The Estee Lauder brand had an older audience. And so there's this young and up and coming generation that's looking for different things. That's what led to the acquisitions. And then Stila was the third makeup brand. So now they really owned all of the segments within Estee Lauder. Stila was really that LA red carpet, this is your best moment. You
That
are.
was later, years later.
No, actually, the Stila acquisition was in 1999.
And when
because
was Mac?
Mac was, I would say, mid 90s.
Okay, so a couple of years later, Stila
Yeah.
became popular. Is it because Stila was the coolest one in Sephora, and Sephora wasn't a thing for them to play with? They were mostly sitting in Bloomingdale's and Macy's. That was the hub to go, and like Sephora didn't get all the cool brands at the time, and suddenly they made one of their own brand really cool, and they wanted to enter.
Yeah, well, first of all, Stila was cool, and I credit Janine Lobel, the makeup artist behind it. She was a visionary. I mean, you think about everyone talking about sustainability today, and your footprint. Our packaging was cardboard, right? You think
That's
about
way ahead of its time.
way ahead of its
Wow.
time. I mean, she really is a visionary. I credit her with teaching me so much about product and really tapping into the zeitgeist of what's happening. She also, every single one of her products, when you opened the lid of an eyeshadow, there was a quote from a famous woman. Some just made you laugh, some were inspiring. But again, you talk about
It wasn't a thing at the time.
no.
It was
so
a black
ahead.
lipstick, black bullet lipstick by MAC. That's what owned the world, what was running the world, and they all look the same, just a different sticker for the color, and that's it, right? Now they're coming up with something a little bit more refreshing, different colors. Doesn't have to be all black and white, like what you would see.
So the labeling, the marketing, the branding,
Yes.
was all new at the time. Yeah.
All ahead of its curve. All three of them, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Bobby with her 6, ranges of neutrals. MAC with its artistry. It's all about the makeup artist. It was about transformation. RuPaul was their spokesperson.
Mhm, yeah.
And right. So you had that whole edgy counter cool. You had this more natural look. And then you had, this LA brand that was really tapping into all the things we're talking about today, women empowering women,
Mhm.
sustainability.
What year was this? This
was the acquisition of Stila was 1999.
So
It's-
it was still very early on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like sustainability and
Yeah.
and basically equity and making women, and highlighting women's achievements and trying to
Everything you
even
see
it
now
out,
was started years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, it
Years
wasn't.
ago.
I don't think it was as much of a thing in 1999. I think that probably evolved over the 2000s.
I think it was happening. I think what you're seeing right now, and I do want to go back to something about this whole piece of Lauder's strategy to acquire these young up and coming brands, because I think it's important in the bigger conversation
Yes.
about businesses and entrepreneurs and why you're building value. But you're seeing the same thing in beauty right now today. There is a new generation that is up and coming right now who is embracing some of the things we're talking about. There's this whole new era of self-expression, and there's going to be a new MAC. And I think I might be working with a young woman who can bring that to the forefront very quickly. There's this whole thing happening about sustainability and natural and holistic beauty from the inside out. And you think about, what Aveda was doing at the time and, what the story I just told you. So there is a fundamental shift because just like we didn't in the early 90s want to wear our mother's brand, this generation of beauty consumers also, right?
Where their mother's brand.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're defining what their, what self-expression means to them or what, a wellness means to them and
Yeah.
how they're going to approach that. And
what beauty means to them too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's so that
Let's go back though. Let's go back to what you
Yeah.
started with market segmentation.
Yes.
So they acquired Stila, and at the time you explained to me that Stila was the
Number one is Sephora.
in Sephora. In Sephora, they wanted to enter Sephora,
Yes.
and they didn't want to enter Sephora with their flagship brand without knowing the store. So it was important for them to acquire Stila,
Yep.
understand the
Yep.
dynamic in the store.
Wow, I'm so impressed you remembered that. I
Yeah.
told you this at the time.
Well, it was 2015. It wasn't too long ago. I mean, with 2022, it's only
yeah, but
7
I can't
years.
remember what I did yesterday. So
Well, I mean, okay, so I'll say this, right? So Sephora was having a challenge. The reason I remember that it's because they went through the same challenge I went to. I
Yeah.
wanted the big brands. The big brands didn't go in. They had to go and create their brands as cool.
Yeah.
So then the big brands would die to go and be with the cool brands, and that's how it turned, right? Because at first they had
Yes.
the big brands, but then the federated stores, which is Macy's, Bloomingdale's, Diamonds at the
Yeah.
time, said
May Company.
it's if you're in Sephora, you can be with us. So eventually they pulled
Right.
all the big brands out of Sephora. And then throughout the 90s, Sephora built itself with their own brands. Stila was a thing. Now Lauder wants to go back inside. They said, well, let us acquire Stila, right? And I'm just memory from 2015, what you told me. Now let's go by inside. And then he told you it's product diversification. We have to go and learn that space, but we have to also make sure we understand the store. And that was one of the main strategic reasons to acquire
Yes.
Stila.
Yep. There was the market segmentation in the category, but there was a channel segmentation strategy as well. So yes. And in terms of the channel, things were becoming more open sell. The counters were going away. It was a moment in time where Sephora was also struggling to establish itself here in the U.S. And so Stila was the number one makeup brand at Sephora at the time. And that was very much, you know what, you buy the number one brand in this new channel that we need to learn in order to be successful in. And then we export those learnings to the rest of our company so that we understand also what's changing in the consumer experience. How does she want to experience products? She doesn't want to maybe go up to a counter and have somebody there. She wants her own time to explore and enjoy it. And so, yes, it was a great opportunity to really learn about what was happening in terms of how consumers wanted to engage with beauty in a new way for a new generation. And Stila was that entree point for Lauder.
So they're sitting down, and I'm trying to think kind of like as a founder that says, look, whatever I did back then, it gets to be a little bit off-tuned into the market. Now the market changes. And I need to buy the winners in the new categories that are coming. You got like the beauty category, but then you have subcategories. So if you said, okay, in makeup, you can like have 2 winners or 3 winners. They're all different. I'll buy all 3 of them, right? Because they did acquire eventually all 3, right? And
all 3 while I was there.
So I'm thinking when they've done this at the time, as they kept going on and the industry is getting more and more fragmented, which means anyone can open a beauty brand right now. It's very hard to identify a winner. Back then, a winner would go to billions of dollars in sales, as Mac did, and as or even what's the name?
Bobby
Brown, right? Mac more, right? Global. But today it doesn't happen. No brand gets to be billions of dollars anymore for some reason, but it's segmentation, right? It's not segment, it's just fragmentation of the market where everyone can do what you do. Everyone can get on social media. Everyone can go to a manufacturer. Everyone can go and push. If you have something within months, I'm going to have the same product. You come up with a holographic highlighter, say no more. Let's go. And it's really about how fast can I just make it. So I'll go to a local place. I'll buy components that are local. I'll come up really, really quick with a highlighter. And guess what? I have a relationship with a couple big influencers and off we go and let's just start selling. It's just, after a while, it's an impossibility for them to just buy everybody or even identify who's going to make it.
Well, I think it actually, Joe, what you're saying, you're speaking to a brander,
Yes.
right? So understand that for me, I believe you can sell anybody anything once. But if you want to build a sustainable business, you better make sure that your product lives up to your promise.
Okay.
Consistently.
I'm gonna tackle you on this one though.
Yeah, good.
So here it is. So if you say that, okay, anyone can sell a t-shirt for $12, but in order to charge $80, you have to brand yourself. Fair.
Or to sell a second t-shirt.
Yes, or a second t-shirt,
yes,
or a
exactly.
second t-shirt, but you have to brand yourself. You can charge more, you can consistently sell more. However, when you ask yourself to what size you can grow those days, because you say, well, back then, if you say, I buy this brand, they have their branding, maybe I can fine tune their branding because I understand, I have my team, I have Claudia, we can get the branding, we'll put you in this store, you're in 50 doors or 100 doors or 1,000 doors. Yeah, I can put you in 10,000 doors globally. So right now you do 50, but I can put in my chart, you'll be $1 billion at that point or 500 million at that point, and I can control the EBITDA. I know all the politics. Today, it's no longer.
That's true.
So the problem for a company like Lauder that goes and pay EBITDA multiples in the sky or many others like them. They said, well, where do I buy the brand? When is the point now that I stick it? Is it 5 million? Is it 50 million? When do I know that if I buy them at a point and I say I'll pay 10 times EBITDA, I will still recuperate my money and I'll stay relevant because they're relevant. But what is that right price point? Do I buy them when they're that small? That is the challenge that you're gonna have because
That's
no
true.
matter,
And I
because you're
think
gonna
they're
have
grappling
branding
with it.
is not is the branding part, unfortunately, is now up to the masses. You go to so many companies that the founders just very articulate. They can understand branding. Maybe not everybody, but there'll be 10%. But if 10% of the people that can get this, it's just 100 people out of 1,000.
Let's unpack branding from product.
Okay.
Because I said product. Right?
Okay.
And your product is reflective of what you want.
I'm taking my product to Oxygen Development. He's going to make the same product next week.
So
what do you do?
Let's talk about Boxy.
Okay.
Okay. Let's talk about yours. Because,
Yes.
by the way, amazing success story.
Thanks.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you wanted to break the norms of the industry in terms of creating an experience, right?
Yeah.
That was, I got to have it. And that was different in the marketplace.
Yes.
Okay. You just a few minutes ago told me how you continually evolved your product mix, who you brought in, who you worked with in influencers so that you could be relevant, but that your box was always better than your competitors.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I'm talking about.
So I'll explain to you the two differences between a beauty box and a makeup brand.
But okay, so first of all, you're 100% correct. She's 100%
Just
correct.
let me answer that question. I'm sorry. Here's the difference. When you have a beauty brand, everything you do, whatever you do, I'll take it tomorrow to a lab and I can dupe it. I can modify it. I can be the thing is, if you come up right now, and I'll take the holographic highlighter as an example, all right? If you just came up with a holographic highlighter and it turns out to be a thing, there's a supply and demand issue. In the market right now, it's a thing. All the influencers are going crazy of it was either Anastasia coming up with this or the tattoo artist, I forgot her name, that came up with this. And there are two brands that came up with holographic highlighter. Everyone wanted the holographic highlighter. There's about a gap of about 8 months until you can come up with a product into market, right? You go to manufacturer lab, you decide on the formulation, now they go for production. Within those 8 months, there is that much of demand, but only two brands can sell it. If I come up soon enough, I'll make more money, but eventually everyone will come up with the same product and that trend will die. It's not what it used to be before when you had few big companies that compete with each other and it takes them a while to manufacture something. So in today's world, you go in a product perspective. I've noticed this because I've worked with so many brands and thousands of products. Everything eventually gets duplicated. So in the box world, and this is where it gets challenged, you have a whole different scalability challenge. First, to get to about 20,000 subscribers. Because once you get to 20,000 subscribers, you have to manufacture all your products about 8 months to a year out. That kills 90% of your competition, 95% of them. Because now you have to have enough capital to go and buy boxes and anticipate where you're going to be, which you know you're going to miss up or down, a year out. And you have to put deposits because manufacturers don't know you. Now that takes out all the ones with no money. That is something a brand doesn't have. So now I'm only competing with the ones that were able to go after the first hump. Then it's all about execution from there, and we're just doing better. But in your case, I can come up with a small brand, and I can come up with 1,000 or 10,000 units to go and launch very quickly. It's very duplicable compared to what we had. It wasn't duplicable if you really want to scale it. 20,000, anyone can do it. Get to 1 million, different story. That's why you can see hundreds of boxes, but only 2 or 3 that made it all the way through.
Right.
That's the difference between the two. My reason behind telling you this, it's because I feel that the beauty industry have been transformed because of social media and the accessibility. When you go right now to Cosmoprof, you have how many manufacturers? Yes, you can't even count, right? So I feel like that is where it hits a problem for the major brands, where they say, well, you can't just buy the winners because the winners might get irrelevant. And then in a year from now, there's another one. What are you going to do? Pay them another $1 billion? Every year, there's going to be a new one that's going to be the new brand.
I think you have to look at what your overarching corporate strategy is. I don't think it's the same playbook and you hit the same button all the time. I mean, there was a lot in what you just said. And I think, when you take a look at what's happening in the marketplace, a big piece of it is how the consumer is engaging with the category, which is very different than it used to be. So you have what we're talking about from the product, right? And the scalability of something and your point of differentiation. Absolutely, because everybody's doing it. And so I say to people, if you have a proprietary idea or if you're pushing your formulator, buy your formula and make sure you have the manufacturing process as well. So you can take it anywhere you want because it's yours.
Yeah.
Like an Olaplex, if you will, right? Or,
Can you explain about Olaplex?
Yeah, it's a hair product. But then the other thing is your go-to-market strategy. So now I'm going to go back to a conversation. I'm going to bring this back to you because you're one of the best marketers I ever had the pleasure of working with. And I'm not just saying it because it's here. I'm saying it because I learned a lot because the industry was changing and you were on the leading edge of that. So you once said to me, I'm not a sample box program. I'm a marketing company. I understand what's happening in the culture. I understand who those influencers are. I understand how to hit that emotional chord and get them engaged in this product, right? So it's not an either or. I think the industry right now is grappling with, okay, what does that look like for this particular brand? Because their audience is not the same as this audience over here. So that's why brands have looked at portfolio diversification. That's why big brands have struggled, right, to appeal to everybody, whether it was Estee Lauder or a Clinique that had to reboot their marketing and their messaging to bring in that audience. But when you look at the top brands at the end of the year, guess who's on the top? L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, like those big guys, they're the biggest volume ones still. So there's something to be said for, I know a lot of the stuff is acquisitive and there are a lot of little brands that break through, but brand building in beauty is about continuity and delivering in that brand promise. The how you do it can change, but your quality, your integrity, your authenticity, your commitment to what you stand for and how you bring that to market is what great brands, like we were talking about Mercedes and Rolex and Porsche, and there's a reason, and people pay a premium for that because they know what it stands for.
I had a thought about the question you asked because we're still trying to figure out one point, and I thought it was an interesting question because you had asked at what size should you buy a company if you're trying to do an acquisition, and I think that the answer to that lies in the ability to replicate the success of all the other acquisitions you do. So how do you guarantee, and we were alluding to this downstairs, how do you guarantee an acquisition is going to be a success? Because if you can solve for that, if there's a playbook to purchase, onboard, and scale a company, then technically you actually don't even have to purchase a company that already has a significant track record. You could take an up-and-coming company at a lower price point with a lower maybe multiple because they don't have as much venture capital in or private equity money in, or maybe the founders slightly less experience, so they're not going to be demanding this huge multiple on their EBITDA, and you could buy them and then you could still be successful with that. But what you're talking about when they purchased those 3 brands, all 3 of those were successful. There was probably some winners, some losers in other acquisitions they did. But ultimately, I guess the question would be, when you see a company that repeatedly acquires successfully organizations, what are the things that allow that acquisition to be successful so that they don't have a whole bunch of failures? And it's not just luck.
No.
There has to be a strategy to acquiring, scaling. Because if we look at other examples, not to name any names, I mean, I've been through acquisition events before. Same with Joseph, and we've seen acquisition events where the company that gets acquired is no longer successful.
I think he's right. I think for Scott's point, definitely they did a lot of things right, at least early stage when the main people will land.
I'm trying to get a business lesson out of
how
this.
did they do it right? How did they do it right, at least in the beginning?
Okay. So first of all, I think that if there was one set playbook, everybody would be doing it right now. I think every major corporation has a strategic roadmap that's different, and that's unique to them. So let's just start with that and where they are in their growth. But I would say first and foremost, as you take a look at any business, does it fit your long range plan? And when do you do it? You do it when you have the momentum, but also when you see a runway for it, right? So when you see what's happening in the marketplace, they may be developed here, but geographically there's room to expand the brand because there's consumer demand for it and there's a resonance, and the product will do that.
You know what it reminds me of what you just said? It's actually funny. If you watch Narcos, when you said, okay, I know that it sells good over here. Oh, I know it's going to sell great in Italy and everything else. I'm thinking about Narcos, where you see the first or second episode in Narcos 1, Narcos Colombia. And this guy comes from Chile. He teaches Pablo Escobar about cocaine. And he tells him it sells for a couple dollars. You can sell it over here for a couple dollars. Like, my friend, you have no vision. I'm going to sell this in Miami. So that is probably what they had. They're like, oh, we are selling global already. We know the market globally. That's going to work in all those countries. That's probably what they saw.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that that's important, and I think the other thing that the smart companies know, it's not just you lift it and plunk it in. You have to understand in that culture, how do you communicate your message, right? So that it is accepted culturally. Because, some brands love, some countries love American brands, right? And they want to bring them in, or French brands, right? If you come from France and you're in beauty, it must mean you're amazing. Well, not all of them, but, but then how do you communicate that so that you also are culturally relevant?
Both, first of all, culturally relevant outside of your company on a global scale, like in true different demos, but also how do you bring the culture of that organization into your own company and not butcher it? That's also something. Like, how do you not stifle innovation? How do you not kill the passion that the original founder had?
So I have to tell you, and it's not a Lauder story at all, it's an Avon story.
We haven't even gone into Avon yet.
I know, but it's important because that was a place where it was very hard not to let the mothership eat its young. And having responsibility for the U.S. business and responsibility for this little, brand that was really not meant to do anything other than figure out how to reinvent direct selling for a younger demographic who was going to be buying and selling products off of her phone. And so that really was, how do you break the paradigm of direct selling? Right? The door to door became screen to screen. Now it's third screen to third screen. And you've got at the time, and I can't tell you where they are today, but at the time, a $10 billion company globally that was dealing with a channel that was becoming, more and more difficult, and that funnel of bringing new people in and how do they make money and how do you keep that vibrant and alive. It was stuck in very old marketing plays, metrics, all of that, hitting that discount level, lever all the time. So my point is, when I came on, I was asked to
at Avon.
When I was recruited from Estee Lauder to go to Avon, and I was not looking to leave.
Have you ever looked for a job, or people just cherry pick? I guess you're good.
Thank you. That's kind. I've been really fortunate. I have been really fortunate in my career.
One thing you learn when you use a headhunter, the good ones, they don't look for a job.
Yeah, they're not looking.
They're not looking for a job. You have to convince them. You have to explain to them why they should leave where they are and move over there.
Yeah. And so I certainly never expected to leave the Estee Lauder company. But this challenge to reinvent a tired direct selling model for a new generation of entrepreneurs, because Avon is, entrepreneurship. And if you really want to know, if your business, if your dog can hunt, make your representative is your customer and your retailer and your product developer, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting if you fast forward where Glossier made their community part of it, well, that's the fundamental of direct selling, right? It's interesting to see. So, where we were going with that is, how do you keep that culture alive? And I will tell you that it was extremely hard to, because we were breaking all the rules. all the rules, all the business rules, all the business model rules, all the product rules, everything, the earnings structure. And so we tried to ring fence it so that it could breathe.
Mhm.
But little by little, and the objective was learn and export your learnings into the mothership.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
And how serious were they about actually fencing it off? Was it like physical office away
Yeah.
from the main site?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's the funny part,
Yeah.
because this is where you say what happens to the culture.
Yeah.
So it started off when I got there. We had our own floor, totally looked different from the rest.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was for Mark?
This was for Avon Mark. Yes,
Okay.
for Mark. And it was Mark, and great products, no discounting, none of the traditional direct selling levers. And I spent during my non-compete my whole summer on college campuses, watching what young women were doing, who my audience was going to be. And like you do, I would sit down with them and just say, hey, I'm looking to start a cosmetic brand, and how many hours a week do you work? Can you really work? And what do you expect to earn? And what are the softer benefits, the discounts, the this and that? And these interviews formed our business model. So we started off our own space, our own team, things are going, and now the mothership is like, well, we want to put that in the Avon catalog. And it's like, respectfully, no, because that's not that consumer. She's telling you she's not coming into your channel, and she's not buying your product because she wants something different. So we scaled to 100 million in about 4 years, which is great, with our own set of representatives. And we did migrate digital magazines or catalogs to Avon. But little by little, then they, Mark had one page in the Avon catalog. Then it had 2 pages, and then there was a bundle on it. And, and so I used to say they ate their young.
Yeah.
Right.
That's when you over integrate, and you have a different agenda, and you just kill what you had over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I wanted to take you a little bit forward in time. Okay. Let's go chronologically, and we might jump back and forth.
There's nothing
Your time
It's
in Shiseido.
Yes.
All right. I remember one day you
What's
called
this?
Shiseido, for those who don't know, okay,
I love
for
it.
the male
This
consumer.
is so refreshing to talk to someone
Oh my
who
goodness.
isn't
Yeah.
so immersed in the business, because
My girlfriend will be kicking my ass right now for asking.
Shiseido
most likely.
Shiseido
I know,
is a
I love
global. It's a Japanese skincare brand that became a phenomenon. It became a very big. I think they're worth right now roughly about 60 billion, or I didn't check
they're
last time
big.
the market.
They're
It's a
huge.
huge
Oh,
market
they're
cap.
huge.
It's huge market. They own lots of brands. Part of the brands they owned was later on they owned Laura Mercier. They owned bareMinerals. I think they acquired bareMinerals for 1.4 billion at the time. bareMinerals was doing 700 million in sales because they're killing it on QVC. I mean, I don't want to break it down right now, but overall, so you finish your job as the CEO of Laura Mercier. You had that
What was
refreshing
Laura
time
Mercier?
in
Laura Mercier, Revive, and
Revive.
Nyakio.
Yes, correct.
All three.
But I mean, the majority was Laura. It was 250 million in sales that you took it to, from 100 million to 250 million. That's what I mean.
Just
Revive
under-
was about 10 million in sales.
No,
Right.
well, no, but
No.
close enough.
Close enough.
Close enough.
Right.
Close
I'm
enough.
just talking about big ones, but you're running all 3 of them, yes. So you
In
had in
aggregate.
between.
In
You had in
aggregate.
between some
Okay.
time. You consulted for me. I'm going to be talking later on about something that you said that was super impactful for our growth, that you helped me with. But then you got this job, and I remember I was with you when you told me I'm getting a call with Mark. He was the CEO of Shiseido USA,
US, Americas. Yeah.
Americas, and
That's all of NAM? Is that all of North America markets for?
The Americas.
because they have global. It's in
Yeah.
Japan based, but somebody had to
No,
run.
I'm just wondering the
yeah.
scope. Like, how big is Mark's purview? Like, it's significant.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
All of
Yeah.
the Americas.
It's
Okay.
all the Americas.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. And then
Huge.
we thought you're going to run again Laura Mercier because they just acquired Laura Mercier, and it was kind of like natural that you ran them before. You got them from 100 to 250. Can you please run it? But then, no, you got an
200,
offer
whatever.
Just
to
Numbers
run
don't matter here. I guess.
200. Wasn't 250?
No, It was not.
Okay. Well, you see, I don't remember it all. That's why you're here to correct
Yeah,
me.
I just don't want anybody to come in. And
What
go,
were the actual numbers
No, well, I
that are
really,
public,
I
or are
think-
there no public numbers?
I think you just
It
need
doesn't
to
matter. It's-
take
yeah.
my word. It was not 250 million, nor was it 200.
Okay.
But near there.
Okay,
How's that?
sounds good.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. So,
wanna get
but
anyone in
it was a
trouble here.
serious brand. It was a serious brand. They acquired the brand, and then you ended up getting the job as the CMO of bareMinerals, which was a much larger brand, and there was no CEO at the time. The idea was that you can start off, and we'll see what happened maybe later on. Tell us about that experience.
Okay. Lot to unpack there. But first of all, honestly, for me, it was a disappointment because we had just slogged through so many operational issues for the portfolio businesses that we divested. And Laura Mercier and I were so excited to have that all behind us and to be able to embark on another growth trajectory, to continue that together. So,
So Laura Mercier is the founder, obviously, of Laura
Right.
Mercier. She's
The
a
makeup
makeup
artist.
artist,
Yeah.
but she was not the CEO of her own
Actually, I
company.
learned that this morning when I
Yes.
I was Googling all these makeup brands.
yeah, she is, I can't even be objective. She's become a almost like family, truly family and friend, but business partner. And there was a magic there that, it comes from knowing the strength of your founder
Mm-hmm.
and knowing what your supporting role is and playing off of one another's
critical.
strengths
So critical.
for the benefit of the business. And I think that's an important lesson for
Yes.
any founder. It's why we were
Yeah.
a great team as well. And I told Joe when I came in that probably the biggest mistake I ever made was saying yes to bareMinerals and no to move to partnering with Joe
BoxyCharm.
on BoxyCharm
Yeah.
in retrospect.
I
when
was
you
I was
take-
asking her to come and work with us, and
Yeah.
she got a big offer. We were a small company at the time. It was just second year in business, and we were struggling at the time. Nobody knew us, and I told her, "Look, we're going to be big," and she didn't have a doubt. But you obviously, it was the right decision at the moment
At
to
the
make.
moment.
Yes.
But if you look back in time, everything's always, you grow up, you learn a lot, right? So here's a lesson for all young and not so young entrepreneurs and leaders in any business is, sometimes you have to trust your gut and your instinct, and just say, I'm going for it. Screw it, I'm going for it. And I didn't have the courage of my conviction at the time because of other obligations that I had to family and things like that. But, I wouldn't trade a minute of my Bare experience either, because you learn so much on challenging businesses. So to Joe's point, Shiseido had the business. The market dynamics changed again, right? And so here was this darling of QVC. The founder who was the face of the brand and the energy of the brand. And I got the benefit of spending a little time with her, but she went on to do something else. The brand overexpanded its owned and operated stores into malls when people were migrating out of malls,
Mm-hmm.
right? They opened additional distribution. And so now you have a brand who was the original clean beauty brand down in revenue double digits when the whole market is growing in clean beauty. And so you had to unpack all of these pieces about the brand and what do you need to do to revive the brand, the channel. How do you return it to profitability? How do you rationalize the distribution? How do you look at the geographic opportunities right now as clean beauty is growing? And one of the things that Joe and I had talked about was there was so much to do. You needed to be able to be a firefighter. And I found myself on an airplane every 5 weeks flying to Tokyo to present our strategy. And, they're very process oriented and, very much this consensus building. And that was a big lesson for me as an executive who grew up
I was
in the
trying to
US.
talk to you, I remember that time, and every time you couldn't because there was another presentation you have to prepare for weeks in advance instead of doing the job for people in Japan, and it was kind of like mind blowing to me. It's just so not important to present. Just let me fix, move aside. Just shut the fuck up, bitches. I'm gonna take care of it. But move aside. Let me do my work. I'll come back when I'll come back. But right now you can't disturb. And it was impossible to get a hold of you at that time
I know.
because you just had to go and work and present, and it was take you and the whole team.
The whole team.
The whole team,
The whole
everybody,
team.
just no work, just work to present. It's like, and I gave you the analogy. I said, you know, when you deal with what's not important and definitely not urgent, it's as if the Titanic is sinking and your entire job is like, let me clean the bathroom before it's like, it's just not the important. You don't do the regular stuff at that time. This is where you all have to buckle up and let someone else modify.
Well, these are these
business.
big company problems that I was talking about, but it seems like that's taking to the nth degree, right?
Yeah, well, it goes back to culture, right?
Yeah.
What, we as a U.S. culture, I think, are inclined to lean in, move quicker, take some bigger risks. Think about that country of origin. And, it is a very methodical, process-oriented type of, traditional culture. Nothing wrong with that.
But how do you apply that to
Exactly.
a fast-moving market? That's
Right.
the issue.
Right. And I would say that it tested all of our ability, which is why I was working all the time, because you would, be preparing for these presentations and then doing your real job at night, when you might want to be home and have dinner with your family from time to time. But it was for me culturally a challenging time because there was so much that needed to be done. There was prioritizing it. It was one of my colleagues once said it was like fixing a flat tire when you're, racing the Daytona, right? And the car's in motion and you're in the pit trying to do it at the same time. So, I think in those times, you have to look at what are the urgent things and what do you need to be able to provide the air cover for your team as a leader so that they can fix it and get some traction while you're managing, the process, right? But still accountable for the numbers.
I want to just say one thing that kind of like struck me was when I asked you about the structure, you spoke to me about the metric system where you manage one thing and another lady manage another thing.
Yes.
She doesn't. You create the concept and she needs to execute. However, she doesn't report to you and you don't report to her. And it seemed like an oxymoron because no one is accountable. So you said, okay, do X, Y, Z. She said, I don't want to do it. And then
this was at that time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's where.
Because you were CMO there?
Yeah, I was CMO and head of international.
And who's the
and
person
then-
you're referring to?
I forgot her name.
No,
It
what's the
doesn't-
title?
She was the GM, president/GM
But no
of the
one's
U.S.
CEO. No one's like.
We reported into the CEO of the Americas.
Of Shiseido, not for the
Shiseido.
brand itself.
So there was no
Yeah.
brand president at the time. There
Okay.
was a runway there. And that's where somebody has to make the tough calls. That's where the senior leader has to step up
Yeah.
and support the people he's put into place or she's put into place at that time. So obviously, opportunities there.
How much knife stabbing there is out there in this world, in this corporate beauty world between
What'd you
people?
say? Which-
Stabbing with knives, political
Like
yes,
backstabbing?
backstabbing goes on. And
Oh, I like to operate in a, bring your best, do your best. It's a long game, right? There's plenty of room for everybody to be successful.
But is it true to say that it was a competition and people step on each other in that particular case where one of you needs to be the CEO? It's either you or her. Both of you are fighting for the position. However, no one reports to each other, and then it's all knives out.
So, here's where you have to look at things with a sense of humor. Neither one of us got the job. And he hired someone with absolutely no experience
Yeah,
in the industry.
interesting.
And then both of us spent all our time teaching our boss while all this was going
Interesting.
on and flying back and forth. So, yeah, I would say that there are plenty of learning opportunities there. Look, in general, it was meant to be a meritocracy. It didn't necessarily play out that way. But you learn from that too. And I think you learn a lot about human nature and how people comport themselves during times of extreme pressure in the business and in the deliverables. So, I don't get involved in all that stuff because I really believe your reputation's all you have.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to operate by your moral code and your principles. And I've always done that. So, my favorite expression is I like to take the high road because there's less traffic up there.
But if you speak right now to our listeners, and some of them want to have that corporate America going around the city with the suit and having this great office with beautiful
suits.
view. Well, I mean, some people want to have that beautiful view in the back of the window
It
with the
doesn't
coffee
stink.
machine. It doesn't stink, right? And it's cool. I mean,
No,
I've
it's
seen the
very
way
good.
I've seen the way they operate, and I would tell you that it doesn't look bad. I mean, they work more hours than anyone can imagine. They're hardworking people. They
Not
deserve
all
a
of
lot
them.
of.
They don't work more than entrepreneurs.
I'm not saying it's more than entrepreneurs. I'm just saying that they do work hard. And
They do
I mean,
work hard, yeah.
she can tell you from her own
Yeah.
experience, you work very hard. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work to do. But
At that level,
but then
yes. Yeah.
but then the idea is that what would be the advice you give people that want to get into the corporate world in terms of, look, this is how you protect yourself, because every corporation has it's a political organization.
Mhm.
How would you so if it's too political, that's when you leave. It shouldn't be a good environment to work, or it can actually be sustained working this. What tip would you give people that want to enter this world?
So I would start by saying I absolutely loved my run in corporate America.
Mhm.
Loved it. I learned so much about complex operating models and matrices. I learned how to lead through influence versus hierarchy. I learned, understanding value creation for shareholders. And so, there's a lot of good things there. I would also say my EQ was really refined working in corporate. So, when you're in a smaller environment, sometimes you can let loose a little bit differently. When you're in a boardroom and you're presenting and you have conflicting point of views, I think there's a skill set of how to bring your point of view without being insulting or cutting other people off or things like that. So I would say that there is a lot of learning that I value and that I bring with me. And I try to carry that forward and teach people. Is it competitive? Yes, it's competitive. There's X amount of seats at the top, no matter what business you're at, right? So my counsel to anyone is, focus on being the best you that you can be. Be a constant student of your category, your competitors. My God, people who are like, I don't look at my competitors. It's like, really? I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you read one of my favorite books that one of my mentors gave me when I first became a CEO, Michael Gould, he was the CEO of Bloomingdale's at the time, and it's called Mandela's Way. And it's the leadership lessons from his life, from Nelson Mandela's life. And I've used that as an operating principle. It's like he says, know your enemy. Mine is, know your competition, right? And be measured. And it's a long game. It's a long game. And so, knowing, I think in a corporate world, when you need to be in front of it and lead from the front, when you need to lead from behind where you're not there. Right. And you have to move your team forward. So, for me, it's like, know who you are. For God's sake, probably the most important thing I can say is you learn more from your mistakes. So don't let them undermine your confidence because we're all going to mess things up. God knows I have, you've watched them firsthand.
Yeah.
You helped me with a recent
I want to say how you helped me though. We'll talk about visiting you at the time at the office, but when I was running BoxyCharm, it was about 22 employees at the time, and I was kind of like a chicken with his head cut off. I had to look at every activation people wanted to do, and I would say yes, no, and I couldn't really scale. It was just hard for me, and I needed people to understand their own, kind of like what to do and how to do it. And you told me, well, this is what it looks like in a corporation. There's a goal. and then you have the few pillars, and this is your executive summary one. So when someone comes in, within 2 or 3 pages, they understand what you're all about. Then you break it down from there. So I have to think about my goal. I know what I'm doing. I have to kind of like understand intuitively what are my intentions when I do all those actions. And eventually I wrote down, I want to grow. So our goal is to grow. And then I wrote down the 4 pillars that it took me a minute to even think about them, because I had to think, is that a strategy? Is that a tactic? And what's the difference between the two? And finally, it all came together for me where I said, okay, here are my 4 pillars. Get the best product in a box, get the best customer experience, get the best brand experience, give them best-in-class marketing campaign for free, and get the best influencers experience. And that changed the entire company because it was so easy. It was, here's the goal, and here are the 4 ways to reach that goal. And if there is no executive in the room, you already know how to make the decision. And I would give a negative example when it doesn't work. And I would say, well, if we want to go and say, let's feed the homeless every Tuesday, is that going to help us get a better product in a box? No. Would that get a better experience for the members? Absolutely not. Customer service doesn't work. Is that going to give any better brand experience? No. Influencers experience? No. Then it doesn't help me grow. So I don't do that. I only do what helps me grow, and that's the way to know. Laser focus, goal-oriented. All the vectors goes into one direction. You pierce through anything. And that wouldn't come unless it was you. And the company, that was in 2015, that's when the company transformed. And you would see later on in the company people sitting down, and you would see managers talking to their peers, and they would say, well, okay, that's a good idea. Let's see, what pillars do you hit? They would say 1 and 3. So anything you throw on a wall sticks. Anything you throw on the wall sticks. And it takes me back to what you said. When Leonard Lauder told you, think like you're a consumer, right? Think like it's such an entrepreneurial phrase. Think like you're a consumer, right? Where is my consumer? Oh, he's in TikTok now. Let me go to TikTok. What is he doing? Oh, he's no longer doing crazy makeup look. He's going, this is how you think like you're, this is what Gen Z is doing. Okay, I need to get, who's the winner in the Gen Z category? Okay, let's go and see if we can acquire them. Yep. That's such a smart entrepreneur. Well, now, if you had to go and kind of like take it all back and you ask yourself, all those years experience, what was the most impactful place for you to work? All those companies you worked for, what was that place that really transformed you to who you are today?
Oh, God, that is such a tough question because there were so many different life-changing moments for where I was at that moment in time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I gave you many examples from Estee Lauder, and I would say that whole run was transformative, but more importantly, laid the fundamentals of how I operate. Mm-hmm. But I would also say that my time at Avon and 2 extraordinary women at the top, Liz Smith, who was my boss, and Andrea Jung, the CEO, the lessons learned. I mean, I remember meeting Liz. She came from Kraft, and I came from Estee Lauder. So this was an important. Now you talk about this.
Not familiar with Kraft. I don't know.
Yeah.
Kraft.
Yeah. Macaroni and cheese.
Okay.
Huge
oh, yes. Now I know. Yes.
Yes.
I'm thinking makeup in my head.
No.
Kraft. No.
That was my point. So
They're
here
enormous.
we both landed at Avon. She from Kraft, me from Estee Lauder. And we sat down in a room together, and I knew this was going to be an amazing experience because she was so real. She's like, look, marketing fundamentals, I got it. I know how to build it. I know how to do it. I don't do beauty. And I was like, okay, because I do beauty, but what is this regression analytics and what is this that I need to understand? And because one of the things that I tell people is you need to understand the operating fundamentals of your business. You can have a great idea, but if you don't understand the fundamentals of how you're not only going to get it to market, but do it consistently and operate effectively and profitably, right? So you have to understand the beast, right? Yeah. And the market in which you're playing. So I would say that was an amazing learning.
Interesting.
Because how could I, quite frankly and humbly, good for Andrea, how could I recreate direct selling for a new generation if I didn't know what the fundamentals were to begin with, right? Because I'm coming from prestige, which was all retail driven. And this was about, you being
Give me an
my
example of a
retailer.
fundamental.
So I published basically 5 million catalogs every 2 weeks, and understanding, the productivity on the page, the adjacency, what was the stickiness. Here's a
Interesting.
humbling lesson for all you marketers out there, no matter what business you're in. I came from beauty. It was going into fall. I thought, of course, you'd put a fall color story on the catalog. Why wouldn't you? Right? I mean, it's makeup.
Mhm.
And so my boss from Kraft said, it's not going to be sticky enough for this audience. She said, I think we got to put, I forget what her name was, but it was a flying witch for Halloween, witchy, whatever her name was. And I was like, what? It's a fashion book. My God, everybody's driving. So we put the 2 books out in tests. And of course, my cover bombed. And the flying witch that lit up and cackled sold gazillions of my product, of my
Oh
color
God,
product,
that's so funny.
because of the stickiness. So that was an important lesson of know your audience, right? What's going to bring them in,
I love
and
it.
then where are your adjacencies?
It also shows that if you have somebody who comes from a different industry, that could be a net positive,
Always.
huge positive.
Always. I believe in diversity at the table, diversity
Oh yes.
in experience,
Absolutely.
in age, in gender, in cultural.
Mhm.
I think that's where you get your
Yeah,
best
you don't want to
stuff.
get more use thinking like you. Thank you. I know what I think already. Give
Yeah.
me some other ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't tell me what I want to hear. For
Yes.
God's sake, tell me what I need to know,
Yes.
right? We're in this together,
Yeah.
right? And no one has all the answers.
So, Claudia, there was kind of like in the corporate world. I wanted to know, since you were the one that when Lauder were acquiring a company, I think it happened to you with Stila.
Mhm.
You're the lady that shows up with a suit and says, I'm going to manage everything you're doing. Kind of like usually you say to the founder. You had that experience. Tell us what happened.
I did. So first of all, I was referred to as the suit, right? So the suit is coming. And just in course of conversation, it's like, so you're here to make me do things like I don't want to do if I don't want to do them, right?
Mhm.
And quite frankly, the answer is, well, yeah, you sold your company. But instead, what I said was only if what you do doesn't add value to the company for the long haul. So if you think I'm going to come in and be a hard ass, I'm only going to be a hard ass if we're not delivering and we're not working together and we're not adding value to what you created, right? Well, first of all, it's your creation.
I mean, you
And-
should want it to grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think if you sold it, then you know that there are skills that you need that you don't have here. So let's not shoot, let's not shoot the hand that just fed you,
Yeah.
right? Let's find a way to work together. And it turned out to be great.
Okay, that's
And
good.
I learned a lot from her, and I hope that she feels she learned a lot from me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a hazing in the beginning. But that's okay. I mean, that's what you're paid to do. That's why you're put on these things to manage through them with diplomacy.
But do you feel like when you walk into the office, kind of like the new ones, do you feel like either people were intimidated or were people antagonizing you? How was it?
It was more passive aggressiveness.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was. I would never say anything was blatantly, in my face. I'm not going to do this just because you work for the company. Because, quite frankly, yes, I do, and so do you. When you cash your check back in the day, it's not your signature anymore.
Yes.
Right. And so, we all have to work together to create that value. So, yeah.
So what's another corporate experience that you have that you wish some corporations didn't have and you had to go through it? Something that you can tell people, look, some companies do it and this is what they do and I wish they didn't do.
I will tell you the most humiliating experience in my entire career. And it was during the time that I was overseeing the portfolio of businesses that were Laura Mercier, Revive, and Nyakio. And anyway, as often happens in leadership, we agreed to disagree. And it was time to part company. And instead of having a straight up conversation about it, the parent company flew in the HR person and some other person on their corporate jet there was a snowstorm, and I remember coming to work in the snowstorm because they were coming. Supposed to be a big strategy session. And I come in, and basically they fired me, but they had security there. And they took my phone, which was my personal phone. And basically, I had 15 minutes to collect anything I wanted. And security was there to escort me out. I couldn't say goodbye to my team, which they're all wondering what is going on, what's happening, who's in Claudia's office, what's going on here. It was awful. And I thought to myself, and I even said to them, it's like, let me at least say goodbye to the team and let them know we just, nobody did anything wrong here.
Yeah.
Right?
So there was no chaos or something. There was no someone flipping a table or anything.
There was no chaos. I was just stunned because I'd never been treated so disrespectfully. I felt like a criminal. So much so that the backlash, my team was shocked. My phone was blowing up because I did get to keep my phone because I had my, my personal stuff in there as well. So what I would say is, it's not like I had the nuclear launch codes for the next lipstick package, right? I mean, it's beauty, right? Yeah. And I am locked down by confidentiality in my contract. So it's not like I'm going to do anything crazy, right? I didn't have a meltdown or, nothing like that. But I was meant to feel like a criminal, so much so that people called me and said, did you do something wrong?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I guess I disagreed with one of the guys. Yeah. I disagreed with the chairman of the board on the go forward path, and, clearly wrong answer. But I would say that is probably the most inhumane thing a company can do. And big companies, sometimes it's like, you don't have to take away people's dignity. You can agree to disagree and keep your humanity. And really, what harm would it have done for them to let me say goodbye to the team? What was I going to do? Blast the company? I'm not an idiot. I know there's a parachute coming with it, right? So I wouldn't do that.
Well, parachute, I guess you mean there's a
severance. There's a severance that comes with it.
Why would you blow away your severance?
Exactly.
And get worried, you're going to say something. Yeah. So that was. What's the name of the organization?
It was Altacor was the parent company, and they owned Gurwitch at the time. Mm-hmm. And actually, I should say, not the parent company, but there was a division within it. There was a private equity group within the organization, and they were called Altacor Corporate Enterprises, and that's the division that terminated.
That's a true corporate. The corporation owns another. What's the name? Gurwitch. What's the name of the?
Oh, Gurwitch.
The Mercier Corporation
was Gurwitch Products.
Gurwitch Products.
Yeah.
That was the three brands.
That's the evil side of corporate.
Yeah, that's a side you don't.
Yes.
And look, it was a long time ago, but it certainly for me was sobering. I've never ever seen that. In all the years I grew up, people left companies all the time, but they left with their head held high. And, you said goodbye gracefully. It's all I'd ever
But that's very odd, because in the beauty industry, you are moving from one company to another, to another, to another. And you're always able to go back. You're always getting offers from the ones you left before. And I've noticed in the beauty industry, it's very professional.
Yeah.
People go to Lauder, move to L'Oreal, stay in L'Oreal, move back to Lauder, then go to Shiseido. Just a very professional one. People don't, it's not a thing in the main beauty industry, right?
No, it was a little heavy-handed. And, as I said, to your point, I had worked at Estee Lauder, and I'd love to go to Avon. Very gracious. There was a beautiful party when I left. Yeah. I'd been invited back. I stay in touch with all my colleagues, at Avon, same scenario, and certainly this one was a termination, which I'd never been through either in my career. But not for any wrongdoing other than a philosophical difference. And, quite frankly, that's okay too, in terms of the performance and where we should be by what milestone. And they have a right to that. It's their company. And if that's what they wanted and they didn't feel that I was the leader that could deliver it anymore, that's fine. I totally get that. But I do think the manner in which one enters a relationship and exits a relationship is important.
Yeah.
Agreed.
When I got divorced, I remember I thought myself, I don't want to marry a happy woman and divorce an angry woman.
Exactly.
I want to divorce someone, and then I want us to be happy when we see each other.
Exactly.
I want to know that when I come over and visit, she's happy to see me.
Yeah.
I want to know that when she's coming over, I want to be happy to see her. And that should be the same with employees. It doesn't always work, but it doesn't mean we have to stay enemies. So
Exactly. And I'd never experienced that before, nor since. So yeah, I think, I was a little scarred for a while.
yeah.
But
Do you see in the corporate world today, I don't want to say corporate, in the beauty industry, all the way to the corporate world, some CEOs that they're not practitioners. They're just being parachuted from the top. I mean, you mentioned one with Shiseido bringing in to manage bareMinerals and then exiting bareMinerals and losing money over it. But kind of like people that have no clue about the business, they're just managers. And do you see it ever working out?
Say you parachute in like a finance manager into
Yeah.
a CEO position, or you mentioned one. You said the CEO role of
the president's role. Yeah.
role.
It's interesting. I think understanding the business you're in, and it goes back to the operating fundamentals.
Mhm.
There's a reason beauty is such a big business. It's the business of beauty, right? And it runs on a different cycle than like fashion. So sometimes if you bring someone in with fashion without any practical operating experience, it takes a little longer to understand that beauty is it's not like fast fashion, right?
Mhm.
You're building how you manage your size of line, how you manage your working capital. All of those elements are very different. So I think smart people can learn anything for sure. So I don't think there's
But do you see good examples of companies where the CEOs, but I'm not talking about people that come in not as operators, people that just start being parachuted from the top, that stays above that don't want to touch the little details, don't want to learn the little details. They just think like, you should know it and give me a projection. I'm going to sit on top and manage everything. I'll manage the fill rate in stores. I don't need to know the plastic composition. I don't need to know who the manufacturers are. Just get it done.
I've never worked for anyone in that environment that was that disengaged. So I don't have any firsthand experience to give you an honest answer from my purview. It's interesting. I think I've seen people come in from other businesses and be extremely successful. I mean, look at Fabrizio Frida. Came from CPG. He's running Estee Lauder now. Consistent growth upon consistent growth, year on year on year on year.
What do you think makes that growth for Estee Lauder?
Oh gosh, I think it's a combination of things. I think first and foremost, it's a portfolio of great brands that address different consumer segments. And I think that the enterprise has an operational effectiveness that now, today, back to a question you asked me earlier about when you make an acquisition and you bring it in, how do you keep the brand
Yeah.
and optimize, the shared services, the finance, the operations, the regulatory and legal, and, all of those other things that aren't necessarily consumer facing. I think that Estee Lauder has done that rigor where they can bring them in and optimize them. I think there's always work to be done on keeping the brand and keeping it.
What about the people though? Do you think there was a transformation with people?
I've been gone long enough where I don't have a day in and day out operating perspective. But a lot of the people that I worked with are still there and doing well. And I will tell you, having worked side by side with Jane Lauder, she knows that business in and out. She started on the ground. William started on the ground and they worked their way up. And that was very much Lauder's operating protocol and putting you in different functional areas to learn the business. I don't know if they do that still today because I haven't been there. But I think it's a good operating practice.
I'll tell you a little story coming to your industry. When I started flying around 2015 consistently to New York, and I felt every time that was the mecca for the beauty industry. And I felt every time I need to catch up when I'm not. I've been back for 2 weeks, I do whatever I do, I work, come back to New York, and I felt like I need to catch up. just when you're not there, you don't exist. And every time I would come, I would try to get those big brands. And I think that was prior to meeting you. And it was that challenge, because how do you get those big brands to even want to listen? How do you get them to come and say, okay, what is your offer? So I knew I came with the best offer, but you just need to get the right person that wouldn't be so busy in a time where the beauty was in its renaissance time. It was just booming. No matter what you do, you have to really mess it up to fail. It just, everyone were getting orders and orders. Like, why do I need to even talk to you? Move aside, I'm busy. So I go there, and I remember I was trying to get this one lady that was telling me, I've never told you that story. She was working as the head of marketing for L'Oreal USA, and she was working over there. And I was approached. Someone introduced me to her, and she said, "I'm launching my own box as well." I said, "I don't care. I still need someone to consult." She said, "Okay, I will consult for you." I said, "I want the big brands. That's all I want." She said, "Okay, let me go and look at your brand." She said, "The name. Are you sure about the name?" I said, "Yes. I don't care about the name." She said, "Well, I mean," then I said, "Listen, I just need the brands." She said, "Well, also let's look at your website, the look and feel." I said, "Listen, I'm sorry. I'm not going to modify the website. I just need the brands." "Well, tell me, who are you? Why are you here in 7 words, and what are you here to change?" "In 7 words?" She said, "Yes." "Listen, I never done this. You manage L'Oreal's marketing. How about you start? You give me that about L'Oreal in 7 words, then I'll come back to you with mine." "Well, L'Oreal," and she goes on. I'm like, whoa. It's already 70 words. She's like, "Well, L'Oreal is a big wbrand. It's 100. I'm like, "Well, why are you coming up with 7 words for?" "Listen, I just need the big brands." "Yeah, but you don't have a DNA. Who are you? What are you here for? It's not about the money. I need you." I said, "Listen, I don't think it's going to work. Don't worry about it." "Yeah, because your brand doesn't have any feeling, anything. There's no DNA. I had no idea what she's talking about. DNA. This is industry terms, by the way. I just knew if I'm going to get those big brands, that everybody, those hero products from big brands, I don't have to do nothing because that product is desirable. I don't need to think about it." It was just so easy to know what's
By the way,
important.
a lot of people think like that. A lot of buyers think
Who
like that.
starts a company like this? But that was apparently an eminent thing that you need to start before you even start your brand.
It'll be the death of any great company, because
It's unreal.
once you lose that scrappiness, and once you lose that curiosity to learn more and to try to
No, yeah,
It has to be done a certain way mentality.
Yeah, she wasn't a fit, right? But then she said, "Listen, you're never gonna make it. You don't really know what's important."
Did you call her recently?
She called me once I made it. Once I started growing, and I started making the industry magazines. She called me, and she said, "Listen, I didn't know you're gonna grow to that size. I guess I have to have some tips from you." I said, "Sure. What do you need?" She said, "Well, I'm still thinking with my brand and XYZ." I said, "Yeah, but that was 2-3 years ago. How many boxes did you sell so far?" She's like, "Well, nothing. I didn't launch it yet because I'm still trying to modify my mission statement around who am I."
That's like analysis paralysis.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and that was the thing. So when I spoke to you, it was very refreshing because you didn't give a fuck about all this stuff. It's just, you're like, "Oh yeah, brands, let's go. Okay, let me go and tell you how you get everyone to understand what you're doing." It was just
okay,
those.
so answer the question. Like, how did you get the big brands without that stuff?
Well, spitting a lot of blood. I mean, you have to really climb that mountain with that big rock that you push. You kind of know that you need that one big brand,
And then they all follow. Okay.
Yeah, but the idea is that
But
I said I'm a marketer, right? I'm a marketer for them, and it took. And I remember the first times where the big brands came in. I learned that a big reason they came, it's because their social media marketing team became a thing. Before that, social media wasn't much of a thing. So now they're like, "Guys, we need to be with BoxyCharm." And I can tell you so many tactics. One tactics we did.
Well, how about, I would say one of the biggest things that I watched in terms of you connecting with people is we would go to these industry events.
Yeah, all the time.
And, just introducing you to people and then letting them spend time with you and feel that passion and that, and what your mission was and how you knew where the audience was going and how to reach them. And then all of a sudden people are like, "Who was that guy that you brought? What was his name again?" And so, you made the comment about earlier today when we were chatting about people who sit in their offices versus people who get out there.
Yeah.
And I think that that is key. I think that's where any
it
good
was
company.
absolutely
Yeah.
You have to be there. I just didn't understand. One of my competitors never been there, and I asked myself, but why? It was the biggest. Why is it? And just where are you? But the thing was, for me, it was kind of like a bunch of stuff that you do, right? You can't pin on one. I remember one thing we did. One brand really wanted to keep working with us again and again. So what they did was they sent us a box. It was a cake, but it looked like a box. It was all edible with all the products in it. So they just wanted us to repost them because our page was big. So we posted that. And then I said, fuck, this is it. Let's go. We made cakes in every big brand we wanted their business received a cake that looked like a BoxyCharm box, but it looks to perfection like a BoxyCharm box. It was like $1,000 for each one of
It's
them.
like one of those, like, you
and
can't
with all
believe
their
it's
products
cake.
inside.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Let them eat cake.
Yeah,
you know how many
yeah.
brands came because of that? I mean, Becca came because of that. You know how many of them? And we got Becca. It was Prosecco Pop first, then we got Champagne Pop in our box. It was the number one highlighter in the world.
You blew that one up.
Just boom. It was just, there is no competition. Like it doesn't make it to a subscription box. It was kind of like, why would they put it? It's the hottest. And eventually we had Better Than Sex mascara. We had it all. You name it, we brought it in. And every tactic added. So when we said brand experience, is that going to add to the brand's experience? Because we had the 4 pillars: customer experience. Best product in the box, customer experience, brand experience, influencers experience. So for the brand's experience perspective, every time there was an idea, you said, will it be good? Well, it would change. The brands will know us now. They're all going to have a cake in the office. They're all going to know who it is, part of the experience. You want their business. Anything that works. And it was the most simple tactics you would imagine. And you would just go around, look at what happened in the world and say, oh, that would help here, that wouldn't help there. You're just very aware because you have a direction. And that direction was such an instrumental mindset to follow. It was probably one of the, and that's why I wanted to bring you over, because that was just a very simple thing that you taught me that made me think, but forever you change. Every company you open from now on, this is how you go, and this is how you make the destination easy to reach.
It
He's
really
good.
is that
He's very
simple.
good.
Yeah, I mean, it really
He's
is.
very good
Yeah.
marketer.
You know,
Absolutely.
and he is one of
And
the
it doesn't
best.
take much, I guess. Like, I don't know beauty, but I'm assuming that it didn't take much to differentiate in beauty industry marketing. You're talking about how even social media was novel and new. I mean, that goes to show you that, like, you take a simple idea, like, I mean, sending cake to, the word isn't buyers, but sending cake to these, like, company representative stakeholders. All of a sudden, you just totally, they've never received anything like that ever
Yeah.
before.
Mhm.
And you copy paste into any industry if you want to make some noise.
Anything.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, if you think about that, it's that unboxing experience.
Yeah.
So no matter what, I mean, I get supplements that
Yeah.
come now.
Yeah.
And, you know, I open everything, by the way, ever since BoxyCharm, every time something comes now, whether it's an influencer mailing in my industry or outside of. And like I said, just recently, supplements, like
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let's see what this is, you know, and
Open it up, yeah.
Exactly. And are they leveraging QR codes to teach me a little
Yeah.
bit about the product
Yeah.
and what happens when it arrives, and engaging me from that moment with an element of surprise, right? So there's so many things that are transferable from other industries.
Absolutely.
Yeah. right.
Absolutely. You pick up tools. The way I noticed, I kind of like, I always looked at this. It was very much for marketing, but it goes for anything else. That I came in as a marketer doing marketing for other stuff. And I said, they don't use any of those tools. It's kind of like I'm coming into a new continent. You have indigenous people with bows and arrows, and you're like, oh, I'll bring my AR right here. I'll be the. It was as you said, you pick from that industry. Now the beauty industry is highly competitive. When I walked in, it was only few that understood influencers marketing, and people kept swimming against the current, trying to go with magazines and all that. It was like, okay, that's how they work. Once they go into I knew how to manage that, but that was easy at the time. Today, you go in, everyone do the same thing. Everyone has AR. They all shoot at each other with the advanced weapon system. You don't want to go.
Now, you mentioned that you were actually working with some potentially up and coming brands that could be like the next thing, right?
Mhm.
So what do they do different?
So first of all, let's just start with the founders, and you know, whether it's Joe or these men and women actually that I'm working with, they have a vision. They have something that's differentiated in the marketplace. One is a brand that's coming out that's based on longevity science. So it's a holistic view.
So but you're a board member right now and a consultant.
Mhm.
So we're going to go back into it real quick, but you're a board member and consultant now.
Correct.
On multiple companies. Some
Yes.
of them are public companies.
Mhm.
And I think what's making it very unique is that going from the corporate world day job, now you have basically a job every few months, you have a couple days where you sit down with a particular board and you go through some pretty hectic reading, but then eventually you give your ideas, and you probably get a check from each one. I would want to say around $100,000. That's what I hear that they're paying. I don't know what you're doing, but that's usually the market.
Honestly, it depends on the company, the size of the company,
Okay.
and whether they're public or private. But some companies are smaller and they
can't afford that
right,
amount. Yeah.
Exactly.
But then you get also stacks, right? So the idea is
Yes.
that you can absolutely live as a consultant, but instead of just looking for opportunities here and there, you can go to a more structured format where you say, here's a public company, they're looking for a board member seat and someone with that particular experience. Tell us, how do you get those people?
Sure.
What do you do if somebody wants to say, I can leverage my knowledge, I don't want to work full time, but I do want to have a couple of those gigs plus getting some equity? What do you do? How do you do it?
So I would say to anyone, I started thinking about it heavy in the seat. Like when I was, believe it or not, I started thinking about it during that whole experience with Bare. And it was like, okay, two things. I'd love to, latch onto something else and have another run. But in the meantime, I remember seeing some of my colleagues start landing board seats outside of the industry, so that when that time comes, because whether we face it or not, the beauty industry is, I hate to say it, but it's true. It's a little ageist, right? And certainly being a woman in that industry, you're sensitive to that. And you have to understand, okay, I'm not going to have somebody put an expiration date on me.
Mm-hmm.
So I better start thinking about it now. And so I let that be known to some of the recruiters that I had spoken to through the years and said, okay, what do I need to do to get ready? And how do I need to market myself? Update, my executive bio, really think about, what impact did I have on that organization and what could I bring it to? And I really started working with a coach to reframe my narrative to fit board seats so that you could look at other industries. I was also asked, do you want to stay in beauty? And it's like, no, that's where I work. So obviously
you wanted to change.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I do believe that there are some great synergies. And so I was fortunate to have used a firm when I was trying to find a leader in the UK, and the firm was Spencer Stewart. And so I got a call from Spencer Stewart in the UK and also in the US about this specialty chemicals company that had businesses, yes, in consumer products, but also in mining and agriculture and in diesel and marine and fossil fuels and how to clean, burn cleaner, right? And give efficiencies and lessen the impact on the environment. And I thought, wow, what an incredible company. Are you sure you got the right number? Like, have you read my background? And it was great to be able to see your skills transfer. As I was studying the company and what they were doing, I was like, oh yeah, this would be so applicable to their business at this point in their evolution, as they're really focused on ESG and really focused on that. And really focused on, sustainability and sourcing and the beauty industry's there. So I would say to people, start thinking now, no matter what field you're in. For example, technology. I mean, everybody lives off of it, right? The world is tech enabled, right? And so, okay, so then what are some other areas where I could take my learnings and add value? And work with some recruiters and get it
So
going.
you have certain recruiters that are specialized in getting board member seats, advisor seats.
Most of the big recruiters, whether it's a Spencer Stewart or a Russell Reynolds or a Korn Ferry, but most of those bigger firms, as well as some boutique firms, And
Is this like a, because I don't even know those names. Is this like a Robert Half? It's a
we,
Robert
we,
Half.
we don't know those names.
okay, so they're actually great executive placement firms, and there's one JBH that I'm working with now. I sit on the board of Fashion Group with a gentleman who's the president of a recruitment firm that's excellent, and they have a board group. They have people who actually place board members and look at big companies and what their needs are, and what skill sets do they need on their boards for the appropriate governance. Do they have the right players in finance, in legal, on the commercial side of it? And so, where are there places where executives with experience can add value to the executive team?
Mhm.
So there are actually sections in these companies that focus on board placements. Now, smaller boutique firms do both, but somewhere along the course of your career, if you haven't been approached by a recruiter, then make yourself known, right? I mean,
That's where you're at. Like that's the stage you're at in your career.
Yeah, make yourself known.
Yeah, because right now you're not managing a company. You're
Right.
not an executive. You have your schedule open more than before, and you just go to the right firms. Make sure that if there is a good opportunity in the now, what company
I
you would
wouldn't say that. I
No?
would say that with the people that I'm working with now, there's an opportunity to get re-engaged again in a more meaningful
Do you want to?
way for the right thing. There's one that I can't talk about right now, but for the right thing, yeah.
Mhm.
Because look, I mean, what am I going to do? Just there's so much energy and there's so much learning, and the more time I spend with young talent, the more I learn from them.
It probably makes you excited too.
Yeah.
It gets you excited when you work
Yeah.
with startups.
Yeah, it does. And I think it keeps you engaged.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's just, I don't know that I just want to sit back and watch it go away. Sometimes that I don't know if I'm yet at that stage where it's okay,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say too, for anybody who is making that leap, what was helpful to me as I walked into that boardroom and understanding that the executives are running the company, right? And particularly if you're still operating, because I was until recently, as you know, till December, in the seat, in that CEO role. And right now I'm doing some interim CEO work. So important to know when you're operating and when you're on a board and it's governance, right? And you let the leaders lead,
Mhm.
and you're there to provide, strategic counsel. And I think that that's an important thing, and particularly for an entrepreneur, because my God, you're all over it, right?
Yeah.
And so hard to go into a room now and have all these great ideas, and it's like, well,
Yeah. It would take
they're going to
100
take
years.
that, right, and run with it.
Yeah.
So it's humbling again, right? It's not your company.
Yeah.
I still wanted to. Can we go back to the question I asked before? Because I still want to understand. Like we were talking about innovative marketing strategies that makeup brands are using. So I was saying the ones that you're working with now. What are some of the things that you're seeing them do that differentiate, that are sort of letting them be they're sort of carving the way for the next?
Sure. So one is a machine on TikTok, like a machine, but this is a person with credentials in her field who understands how to connect with her audience and where her audience is, right? And so I would say that aside from the fact that she's got a proprietary formula, she's got the credentials in the space. So this isn't an Insta star. This is somebody who's been working in the business who quite frankly
Is that in
started.
the beauty industry?
Yes. Who started behind the counter, and assisted a great makeup artist out there and yet another, and is still working in the field and has a point of difference product, but also understands where her audience is. And I think she'll break through because her concept reminds me very much of what was happening in the 90s and all those things that broke through. Another one has some great innovation in the skin longevity, using longevity science for skin, for supplements and topicals, and really tapping into skin revitalization from within. Your body naturally has NAD in it. And so this really works with your body to optimize it. And I'm not a scientist, so I'm not even going to try to explain the science. I'm so blown away by these scientists, but what they've done is really incredible in finding a way that this can be absorbed topically down into the dermis, which is difficult for this molecule in the past. And so again, I like their whole biotech, and it's a biotech company. It just so happens that their first entree into the market is a skin supplement product. But again, I like the longevity approach, because right now that's what we're all about, and how they bring that to market, without divulging too much. But technology is a big piece of that, right? If you sit there and you look at the Apple Watch, right, and those commercials and everything it tells you, right? So you think about, how do you bring that into your whole lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what you're ingesting and what you're putting on and what you're doing. So embracing technology, embracing communication and community building through the use of what? Technology.
Yeah.
So, I think, but they're both using it differently. Does that answer your
It
question?
does. And what does breakthrough look like now? How do you, so, when you're looking at a company, you mentioned this before, the whole industry is like, there's so much competition. It's
Speed to market.
insane amounts of competition. So
Speed to market, yeah.
Speed to market.
Yeah. You know the idea that I had in case I don't sell BoxyCharm, and things wouldn't work out because it was COVID years and all that. My plan was to do two things. One was to take a brand, to go to the big brands and say, give us an item. Let's create an item. You're gonna manufacture and sell it on our site. You're gonna send your people. It's open for everybody, not just our community. Only new items, something that doesn't sell in Sephora, so it wouldn't be a conflict of interest, but you just launch it with us. We do 50-50, so we create revenue. But we'll do it every month, and it's going to be Natasha, Danona, for example, Too Faced, all those big brands. This way, they send all their email lists to us. We collect their money also, but it's the name, email address. We get all the information. And then we can upgrade them to subscribe. But then the main point is it's another revenue that we don't do. And now we, instead of going for the subscribers, recurring revenue, now we're actually getting for free actual transactions, actual e-com transactions. So then now the brands wouldn't look at us as marketers. We're going to really be a serious competition for Sephora. And I noticed that Sephora didn't come in to buy us. And I said, well, because we were actually helping them, they don't fucking need to buy us. But if I do this now, it's a problem, because all I have to do once I get big enough to start putting core products. Right now, I'm going to only do newness. But once I'm big enough and they can kill me, I can go and tell them, now roll in all your other products, or at least a couple core hero items that I know I can sell, and I can build it up. That was one phase. The second phase, talking about speed to market that you mentioned, I figured that the only problem in the beauty industry is the fact that all the components are made in China. And that adds about 2 to 3 months, sometimes 4 months to the whole process. So why don't we have components made in North America, maybe in Mexico, maybe in Dominican Republic? So I started making phone calls, and I learned that there's no particular reason. It's just because you're already getting it from China and no one is trying to be faster. I called all the manufacturers, and not all, but few. It blew my mind that all of them said, I don't know. I mean, okay, but the brand, if there is a trend that goes on right now, go back to holographic, and I can be in stores within 90 days. The supply and demand, if you have so many people searching for it, and I'll be the third player to come or the second player to come, of course I want to come. I don't want to come when 50 other comes in with the same supply chain problems. I want to be before anybody else. So if I was to do it, I'll be able to kind of like control and say, well, you can do it only if you sell your products on our platform. We'll manufacture you the components faster, and then you can do the wholesale on our website. Now you launch it with us. Now it's a chess match, because Sephora, if you're stuck with products, have no fear, we put it in our box. So there's no RTV. This is going to be zero chance for Sephora to ever compete because they don't have the subscribers, they don't do manufacturing, and now I'm only selling newness. And the brand would only make money with us. And the brand would have to go and be in my box in order for them to be in my. So that was my plan to take over. So I wanted an input from an exec like you. Shoot holes into that theory.
Wow, I was just going to sit here and compliment you on that, Barry.
Thanks.
So, okay. No, really. And I'll tell you why. Because what you just did was exemplify what we've been talking about today. And that is agility. You see something, you see a market, you're aware of the fact that it's got a gaping hole. Nobody's moving fast. Nobody's being a fast mover. That's why entrepreneurs are so exciting to me, because you're nimble, right? You can make a move and make an impact. You fail fast,
Yeah.
right? Not on a big scale. But you couldn't get their attention, right? Because they didn't get it. But you had a solution for them
Yeah.
that would have renovated
Everything, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't really want to shoot a hole in that theory, because one, it never came to pass, but two, it was a great strategic play of how you would again take a brand, Sephora, that was innovative at the time. When they first came, they were the place you went to incubate your brands. They
Mhm.
had all the brands that people wouldn't take. They were the story you lived. So naturally, you would think when you went there would
Yeah.
have been synergy and an understanding of that and an embracing of that, right?
Yes.
Not the case,
Not
right?
anymore, yeah.
Right. And so, I think that's the watch out for companies too, as they grow, is don't get complacent. I always I keep this close to my heart as an individual, but also for companies. Like, don't read your own press, right?
Mhm.
When you stop
Mm.
being hungry and learning and nimble,
like that.
and but when you think you're all that, that's when the universe, God, whomever you believe in, hits you with the humility stick
Yeah.
and a sense of humor
Yeah.
and says, "Oh yeah, maybe not."
Mhm.
Maybe you need to keep grounded in what made you successful in the first place, and stay hungry and continue to do that. So that was, by the way, something you should tuck away, because that just the
I was thinking of ever
yeah.
mentioning this on a podcast, and I decided that, you know what? People would never do it.
I think this is-
Execution is like so far off for everybody. It's not like I haven't spoken about other people that nobody wanted to actually go and suddenly learn something new, because they're all somewhat comfortable, even if they're suffering right now. They're not going to go and
There's
execute.
a lot
so,
of people at the top.
yeah.
They're not working like they used to work.
Mm-mm.
They're showing up to work every day. They're in the meetings. They're appeasing shareholders, the profit, but they're not working. They're not really, really, really working the way that you have to work. They're not thinking outside the box. They're not exploring new things like
Yeah.
that. Nobody's even. But you know why though? Because if you set up the organization and you have 8 hours of meetings, where's the time for creativity? Where's the time for the brain to even start to think of an avenue like that?
Yeah.
And that's why I have to build the org, so that you don't get inundated and just bogged down with all this BS.
Yep. And I think the other thing that happened is, while Zoom, Teams, whatever, was a godsend and kept us, safe. Look, I'm all for flexible work hours and remote and all of that. I grew up in sales, so my office was always in my home, right? So I didn't believe in FaceTime makes you successful, but I've worked for plenty of people that believe that. So I get it. But one of the things that I do think, while it had its good points, the other thing that I've noticed is you don't have brainstorming sessions and strategic conversations. It's very transactional. You have it booked for X amount of time.
Mhm.
Here's the agenda. Here are the points you're going to cover. Okay, we have 4 minutes left. Right?
Yeah, that's
And-
a challenge with a company that does that, because you'll sit down and you'll talk, and guys, there's something pressing. The other facility is on fire, and people are dying. Like, well, okay, thanks. The time for that topic is over. Now let's talk about Jenna's birthday. Who bought balloons? And just let's go and follow that routine. Just there is no consideration of important and urgent.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's true. And the urgent also always crowds out the important. And that's
Absolutely.
something that you really have to, really have to work at. So I do believe, look, I'm not here to preach to anybody, but there's something to be said for humanity coming together and feeding off of one another's energy and looking at each other and building, building that. And then you go off and do your other stuff and the tactical stuff for sure. But I think somewhere we've got to find our way back, because that's where it's hard to get passionate about something on a screen.
It's virtually impossible. It really is.
It is.
I mean, you sit there and you feel like you're one of the Brady Bunch. I don't know if half your listeners even know what that show is. So another,
it's a
It's like
little
it-
dating, but
yeah,
I know the show.
yeah.
I'm not from America, so I don't know what it
It's-
is.
it's
I
just
was a
when you-
kid, but there
when
was
you
a
have all the
show.
faces on the screen at
Yeah,
once for a Zoom
yeah.
call, that's
Oh.
what
Yeah,
you're referring to.
That's you have a screen of all these little faces, right? And the most annoying. Never mind. No one wants to know that I find it annoying when we have meetings and everybody has their camera off. It's like, well, what
I mean,
are you doing?
That is annoying. No, that for me, that's a huge pet peeve.
Yeah.
I was talking about this with somebody yesterday. I get it. Sometimes there's life happening and you
Yep.
don't want to put on the camera. Maybe you're taking a call in your car and it's on Bluetooth, and obviously you're not going to put on your camera. But like, I like to see people.
Well, I guess when you have employees, and if someone consistently, which obviously it happened to all of us, always not turning on the camera, the conversation I had with them is like, look, it's very simple for me, okay? It's as if you're not showing up at the office, okay, and you're on a phone call with me. No, I told you to be at the office. Now, since we're on Zoom because of COVID, I expect you to clear your schedule to work. You're sitting down. You're not going to travel to Orlando, Disney World, calling me in a roller coaster right now and plugging your earpod on your Zoom. No, I need you to sit down and work. If you're not doing it, you're not working. Don't bother coming on the Zoom call if I'm not going to see
But
your
I think
face.
it's a courtesy thing too. Like if everyone's putting on their camera, say you are actually walking somewhere with your AirPods in, you just say, "Hey, sorry." Like at least address it.
Well, I'll tell you where,
Yeah.
where I think it's a little bit more than just if you're not an employee, it's a courtesy. But
Yes.
if you are working in an organization and you see that the person is not turning on the camera, after you finish the meeting, you probably have some tasks to do after. You bet that person that didn't turn on the camera is doing something else. If you're prepared to work and you're sitting down in front of your screen, you turn on the camera. When you're done, I know that person is much more likely to execute what we ask him to do. But the other person that didn't turn it on, because whatever condition was, is not in a working condition. He's not going to execute right away. He's much more likely to push it under the rug. And if the follow-up is in a week from now, go figure. That's where the inefficiency comes. And that's how you can find the ones that are just not made for it. Some people were made to work at the office. They need that structure for them. And by the way, okay, don't get me wrong. I'm one of those that when I was at school, I never liked online courses. It was not for me. But when it's work, it's not a game. For me, it was much more important. It's like you have to go and do it. So that's where I was much more apprehensive when I saw this as a trend. I saw some great people that did amazing. Suddenly, when they work from home, they're not the same. They're not shining on. And sometimes on the other side, people that work from home perform better. So
you got to have. I mean, as a professional, you got to have self-awareness to operate at your highest level. Like that's what you have to do. So if you're in office and you feel like you thrive in that environment and the job that you're doing warrants it, and you feel that you need to be creative with people in a room and whatnot, or maybe you just like the rigidity of that schedule, then you structure your life, you structure your job so you can do that. If you don't, like I don't mind working from home at all. But there's some times where, like for example, I'll function better at home in certain environments where people aren't distracting me. Like when I'm in an office too, people can walk in all the time, right?
Turning off fires.
I mean, the other thing is if you're trying to hire somebody, trying to build rapport with somebody who you've never met before in your life, you can't really do that via Zoom.
Right.
It's virtually impossible. So it's very hard. It's not like if you're going to hire somebody, when I would hire people, I'd go for lunch with them, sit down with them, right? Like spend some time with them. So you have to balance out. So there's sort of a place for both, I think.
Yeah. And I think we're trying to find that place now because really it's a little bit of both. Yeah. And it's not the same ratio for everyone, but it has to be the right ratio to bring your best self to whatever you've committed to professionally, right?
100%.
You've got to bring the best of you to that.
Yeah,
100%.
So,
Claudia, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It was a really good interview. I'm so glad we learned a lot. I mean, I just learned.
This is your first ever podcast.
Yes.
Ever. This is my first. I'm so honored.
We're very proud of you. You did. We give you an A+.
Really?
How about that?
Oh
no
my
guest
God.
actually received a grade, and this is the first time get an A+.
Is that true?
It is.
It is.
I love being best in class. Just a little, what is that? what did we overachiever there?
Overachiever?
Yeah,
Overachiever.
little
Yes.
overachiever there.
That's great.
Honestly, thank you. Thanks
Oh,
for your
thank you.
patience and the opportunity.
Where do you want people to know anything more about you? Where to reach you? Socials, anything like that?
Well, Joe will tell you I'm not. I watch all the social media, but I'm not always engaged. So if you want to get to me, go to my LinkedIn page, send me a message.
Claudia
I
Poccia.
promise. Yeah, it's Claudia Poccia LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
Yeah. See, that tells you. But I do check whoever you out there. And what's so bizarre is I live in that world, right? I'm on TikTok all day watching this
Yeah.
girl, and I'm on this and that. I just,
You use it on a business network.
yeah,
I
it's
appreciate
definitely,
that.
yeah. I figure, you know
Awesome.
what? If I want you in the car with me, seeing all this, I'll pick you up.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to do it on Instagram. I'm not going to do a live. I'm not going to do it. No, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Claudia.
All
Thank
right,
you.
take care.